Now the purpose of this video is to show you how to provide your online materials to your students using Blackboard's Collaborative Ultra. First thing you should be aware of when you bring up Blackboard, you should do it in Firefox. Now under academic continuity, there's some really good information here that you should look at, but let's take a look what you typically do to set up this stuff in Blackboard. First of all, you have a number of courses here. I'm going to pick this one. And if we slide down here, you're going to find that we have something called Course Tools. And when we open it up, you'll find Blackboard Collaborative Ultra, and we're just going to click on that. First thing that it wants you to do is to create a session. And one of the things, if we just take a look back here for a second, you can actually do recordings of what you're doing in the class and have them available for students that miss the class so they can look at them again later. And we'll take a look at that as we go through the video. But let's create our session first. We can set it up with a name, and I'm just going to say trial because that's what we're trying to do. We can provide a description down here as well of just trial. And right now you can see that you can set it up for whenever your time slot is that you're teaching the course, but for today, just for getting started, we're just going to say no end and just have an open session and say save. And you can see that we've got our course ready to go. What we want to do now is use this little button here to say join the session. So we can see there's where we were, and now we've got a Collaborate session running. First thing it's going to do is check my Logitech headset, and it seems good. It seems to be doing its thing. So I'm going to say yes, it's working. We may have to adjust the volume later. Now I'm going to say later because I'm giving a tutorial, and let's close this over here. But as I said, you can see that the audio is turned off and the video is turned off by default. And there's even a thing here where you can say raise your hand, select to lower, and lower it down, so there's ways that students can actually get your attention. So I'm just going to turn on the audio here, and as I talk you can see that this is going up and down, which is great. Now typically what you want to do is if we go over to this right hand side here, and there's some things on the bottom here, there's chat, there's attendees, and we'll look at how to get attendees in a minute, and share content, because this is most of what we want to do is share content with our students and go through it. And of all these options here, typically we want to share files. That's typically what you want to do because you've got PowerPoint, PDFs, whatever. And right now it says you can add files. I'm just going to slide this over a little bit. And I've got two files here. I'm just going to grab them and I'm going to slide them into the add files thing. Let me slide this back so we can see what's going on. And it's going to convert it to its own format. So it doesn't matter whether you have PDF, PowerPoint, whatever. If you've got something with URL links and stuff, it's not going to work. It's just flattening it so it's just material. Now we've got two files here that you want to do. I'm going to look at this one first and say share now, and there it is there. And if I double click, it's going to show up over here. Now notice we have a number of tools here. We have a select, we have a pointer, we have a pencil, we have a square, we have a text thing, and an eraser that clears out what we've done. So, and over here we also have some other controls, like we can zoom in a little bit, and if we want to highlight something we can say okay, let's just click our pencil here, let's pick a color, let's make it red, and let's just circle something that's important to talk about and highlight it as we're going through our presentation. And when we're finished highlighting it, we can just click here and it's cleared away. We can also put boxes around stuff or text, which is kind of neat. You can just say hi there, and again you can change the color of the text to put in the annotations of this nature. And again we can just click here, and we have more than one slide, so we can go on to the next slide. We can do the same sort of thing with our presentation here. And one other thing that we talked about earlier is we can actually start recording. So if I say start recording, everything that's going on now will be recorded so students can actually look at it later. Now since we're finished with this part of the presentation, we're just going to go over here and stop the sharing of this information. And when you've done that, what you want to do is basically remove the file, because sometimes it gets confused as to what file you have. And we're going to click on this one and say share now. And again we can double click here, and you'll notice here that this is actually a link, but it doesn't work, so you can click on all you like. Nothing's going to happen other than it's going to make it smaller again. You can double click again to make it bigger. And again, you can go through all this and you've got all these things. You can talk about slides. You can go to the next one, talk about diagrams. You can do all this kind of stuff. And when you're finished, you can basically stop sharing. Now, that's part of what we want to do. The next part that we want to do is actually get some people in here to actually look at our lesson, because we spent all this time. I'm just going to leave these notes sitting here for now. So what I'm going to do is, to do that, I have to go back to the previous screen. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, okay, copy guest link. And it's copied. And now I can send it to all the people that I want. And typically where you're going to send it, let's close Course Tools here, is you're going to go to Grade Center, Full Grade Center, and what you're going to do if you want the entire class, which I've got in here, is just click here, email selected users, and basically send a message and paste the link in here. When the students get their links, make sure that they paste it into Firefox. Now it says type your name, and the names don't have to be what names they use in class. I'm going to use Simon Cowell, and a lot of times this is better because students can ask dumb questions and not feel stupid. So this gives you a little bit more interaction. So we say join session. It's going to ask to check out your headset because we haven't made any changes to the settings. And we're going to say yes, it's working. And I'm not going to allow my video camera, but I could. And I'll just say yes, it's working. And then I'm going to go in as Simon Cowell. Now for them as well, it's going to say start tutorial, but I'm going to say later as we did before, and I'm going to close this just as we did, and I'm going to wait for the teacher to actually make something available, and I'm going to make it available to the students. Now the thing is, they have a number of controls up here, and these controls are based on settings that you've got set up in Collaborate. One of the first ones they have to do is probably make this bigger so they can read it better. And right at if you use the defaults and they click here, they can actually draw on your diagram and do all sorts of stuff the way you were doing. And if you want to get rid of that, then you will have to change the settings. And we'll show you how to do that in a second. So actually, when you go to the settings, session settings, you're going to see this. So if we don't want them to draw on the whiteboard, we can unselect draw on whiteboard in files, which means that that will disappear. And we can also take away share audio, share video. So let's take out the share video because that takes up a lot of bandwidth. And you'll see down here that all they have right now is their microphone left and the ability to put up their hand. So with this particular setting here, you're able to share audio and they can talk to you at any time, but you can always take that away as well and just click here. And this is probably the best setup that you've got for doing most of your in-class presentations. And you can actually turn these things back on again. For instance, I can go back and say share audio with all the students and then select a particular person to talk, and everybody else will stay muted. I've got all these particular options, but I'm going to go back and just turn off share audio. So right now they can't do anything except follow what you're doing. But there's a couple other things you should be aware of. As you're doing things here and you're talking through what's going on, if you happen to be on a slightly different part of the same page, to draw something around 80, and I'm going to do it in blue, and if they happen to be up here they won't see it, but if they follow your audio then they'll say, okay, as you go down through here, there it is, and it's circled. And again, I can just erase and away it goes. And this is the student view again, so they're going to see stuff and they can put up their hand, and the hand will show up on the teacher's console, and the teacher can make them put down their hand or whatever, or they can put it down themselves if they have questions. But at some point in your presentation, you'll probably want to ask certain things, and we're going to deal with that next. Now, if Simon has a question, he can simply put up his hand. If he wants, he can put it down. But if he puts it up, that means that he has a question to ask. And what the teacher can do is they can, since they've seen it, they can actually say put your hand down, or they can turn on audio and say, Simon, you've got a question, please tell me what the question is and I'll go through it. And then you can disable all the audio if you want, or leave it enabled as long as everybody's behaving themselves. Now at any point your students can go down here and leave session, and they can specify how good the video and audio were, or they can skip and get out. Now at any point what they can do is go back up here and hit enter and go back into the session in case they got booted out or there's some problem. And once the students have left, or even before that, you can do your own logging out. You go down here and say leave session, and again you can do the same thing as the students did, and you can go back to the previous one here, and what you can do is say go down here and actually delete the session once everything's complete. It still allows you to take a look at the recordings that you've done and actually click on it and say watch now, and go through the recording and have the students look at these as well to make sure that everything is working fine. So if I say start recording, the best thing I can say is why don't you email your friends and your colleagues and try some of your lessons out before you go into the classroom. Anyway, best of luck.